Today, we are diving into the fascinating intersection of neuroscience and spirituality, exploring how the human nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, and the brain's unique organization relate to our spiritual experiences. Join us as we unravel the mysteries of consciousness, evolution's role in shaping the brain, and the profound insights from ancient texts like the Bhagavad Gita. Did you ever wonder how our brains perceive spirituality? Or how ancient texts might align with modern neuroscience? Get ready for a mind-expanding conversation that will challenge your understanding of the human experience. And let's start to uncover these and more intriguing questions with Dr. Ashish Pradhan. Dr. Pradhan is a distinguished medical leader who has led cutting-edge work in neurology and cardiovascular medicine. And his career is a testament to strategic leadership and a deep commitment to patient-centric care. With a distinguished career spanning pivotal roles in drug development at multiple global pharma R&D organizations, Dr. Pradhan has pioneered groundbreaking initiatives that redefine patient care and medical strategy. And throughout his career, Dr. Pradhan has led such and greater innovative initiatives that bridge scientific advancements with holistic patient care, earning him accolades for his pragmatic approach and global impact. And in addition to this professional excellence, he is a long-standing meditation practitioner, coach, and mentor. And Ashish was introduced to Sahaja Yoga as a meditation practice at a very young age in Mumbai, India, and having experienced its profound benefits both personally and professionally, Ashish has been a passionate advocate as well as an instructor of the Sahaja meditation technique. Over the past decades, he has led seminars and workshops for introducing this meditation in multiple countries. And the experiences he has gleaned through these years of global interactivity have allowed him time to reflect on how best to introduce this meditation to culturally diverse audiences through the unifying language of science and modern science. Welcome, Dr. Ashish, and it's such a pleasure to have you join us.
Thank you, Monika-ji. Thanks for having me.
And let's start by talking to our audiences a little bit about your meditation journey and the founder of this meditation.
Sure. So, Sahaja was established by Sri Mataji Nirmala Devi as Sahaja Yoga in India. It's also recognized as Sahaja Yoga meditation or Sahaja meditation around the world in 1970 in India. And it is a very simple, straightforward meditation technique which at its very core basically relies or is defined by the awakening of a dormant energy that lies within each one of us. In our sacrum bone. And as we go into this series, we will talk a lot about it, a lot about how the whole anatomical features relate to spirituality. But the awakening of this energy and its ascent through the energy centers that lie above it, and its ultimate manifestation through the seventh energy center by piercing it, so-called in spiritual terms, is what meditation is truly about. But in fact, beyond that, it's what is called as the yogic state. So this was something that Sri Mataji started in 1970. It is now practiced in over 110, 120 countries around the world. At a very young age, my father took to this form of meditation practice, and that's how I took to it as well. And I was pretty young, about 10 years old. And thereafter I have been a regular practitioner of this form of meditation.
So, Dr. Pradhan, before we embark on exploring the spiritual aspects of being human, why is it crucial to first understand the complexities of our nervous system And how does this understanding lay a foundation for our spiritual journey?
Excellent question. So basically, the journey begins with what it means to be human. So when we say we are human beings, that is, we are Homo sapiens, we are defined by a set of biological characteristics, a set of genomic characteristics, the way the genetic code essentially defines us as humans. So for example, as everybody knows now in the 21st century, we have 46 chromosomes within us. So those are both autosomes as well as sex chromosomes. And that is what makes us human. The Human Genome Project essentially unraveled the entire genetic sequence. And that if we just write it out, that we could just, the chemistry of it could be written out. But if you read that, that can also be seen as just a set of alphabets of about 6 billion base pairs of how the genetic code is essentially written. But that could be done for every living organism that exists on the planet. So we have a particular genetic code that is unique to us. Does that make us human? So what makes us human is not the common chemistry that binds us, is the same as in jellyfish, is the same as in fish, is the same as in mammals, in vertebrates, in reptiles. Every living organism has a genetic code. Does that make them human? Well, what makes us human is a very unique capacity that so far at least we believe is very unique to us as a species. And that is the ability to differentiate between what is self and non-self. And that defines us as a human being. Now, it intersects science, philosophy, and sort of religion. So it is that this crucial intersection where we begin to define ourselves as humans. And therefore, at the very outset, as we begin this journey, it is imperative that we realize, that we recognize what it means to be human. And within then that construct of what it means to be human, is this somewhere within us, almost a hardwired system that allows us to be able to differentiate between us as me, for example, I, this sense of I-ness, versus non-I-ness. This, for example, we say is my body. Every human being says this is my body, this is my person, this is me. So who is this me? What gives a human being the awareness to say this is I versus somebody else? Do elephants do it? Do lions do it? Do tigers do it? Do salmon fish do it? Does a condor flying in the air do it? We so far do not know, but it is assumed based on a number of experiments that have been conducted that the closest it comes to are the great apes, the orangutans, the chimpanzees, who can have this understanding between self and non-self. And that, in essence, is the critical starting point to understand human spirituality and its origins.
So, Dr. Pradhan, evolution, has sculpted our brains over the millennia, something that you were already already just touching upon. Could you paint a vivid picture of this evolutionary journey, highlighting any fascinating adaptations that have shaped our brain's structure and function into the marvel that it is today?
Great. So I'm going to take a little bit, I'm going to expand on that question, take a little bit of time to explain. So it's a critical question. So let's start off with at the very beginning. So life as we know originated as single cellular organisms in water. As the planet was formed after the Big Bang, it started cooling, the gases cooled down, the crust was formed, the oceans were formed, the elements came together. And as the planet cooled down, at some point in time, this unique chemistry came together of carbon-based elements and formed what we call life. So it started off as unicellular single organisms that over billions of years matured, grew first into fish, first into plankton, then of course small fish, then bigger fish. Gradually they came up on land, became amphibians, or we call them amphibians. Then we had reptiles, and from reptiles we had vertebrates and invertebrates, that is one with the vertebral column, mammals, and then of course us as part of the mammalian species. Now, if we'll take a look at some of the most primitive life forms, what they exactly are is a single cell or a multicellular organism that indulges in the most basic of functions. It eats, it consumes nutrients, it somehow survives, it reproduces, and basically comes to an end at some point in time, and the cycle repeats itself. So if you look at the structure of these organisms, what we see are rudiments of what we call the nervous system. So the nervous system essentially is a system that allows electrophysiological currents to be generated. If you think of what is a nervous system, think of it as basically electric currents that are generated. These are voltage changes that happen across cell membranes. So like if you take a voltmeter, you put it across, you can see the changes that happen in a membrane or across a membrane, and it's called a transmembrane potential. So why is this important? It seems to go a little deeper into relative to the question you are asking, but this is important because life literally is electricity. Life literally is defined by the presence of an electric charge. So for example, and I'll get back to the question you're answering, but this is again important. For example, when life comes to an end, even particularly in human beings, we say it's not just when the heart stops, but it's when the brain stops. It's called basically brain death. So when that electrical activity that exists not just within the heart that causes the heart to pump, but also the brain waves, they come to an end. And the reason these brain waves are actually formed is because of the movement of sodium and potassium across membranes. So back to sort of what we are discussing. If you look at the most primitive forms of life, they do not have a well-developed nervous system. They just seem to have these minor sort of threads of electrical impulses that are just like a small network that keeps on popping up. And that's how we say the cell is alive. Fast forward, what we see, if you take a look at the phylogenetic nature, if you go from fish to reptile to basic mammal to say man. So say for example you take a fish, you take a serpent, you take a mouse, and then a human brain. What we find is that the basic requirements for maintaining vegetative functions, breathing, locomotion, that is movement, food or nutrition or that acquisition, digestion, excretion, and reproduction, basic functions of life, these are present as they started growing as evolution progressed. We do not know why that happened, whether it was Darwinism, evolutionary pressures, natural selection, descent through modification, everything that Darwin wrote and has since been discussed and debated. All of that somehow came together, but the nervous system started evolving. It started becoming more and more sophisticated in terms of being able to respond to changes in the environment. If you're a small fish, all you're worried about is not being gobbled up by a bigger fish. If you're a bigger fish, all you're worried about is you're not being gobbled up by an even bigger fish. Therefore, you need to start having, imagine being a fish in an aquatic environment. You need sensory organs. You need to detect movement. You need to hear something, not in sound waves because sound waves are not easily propagated in water. And gradually you need eyes, or what we call visual organs, to be able to see if a larger organism is moving towards you. Somehow it is hypothesized that somehow these evolutionary pressures, these survival needs started creating and putting pressure in a way that what we call today the nervous system started evolving. Now, fast forward a few billion years, and what we now find in the human brain is a highly evolved system which has two basic strata. The first strata, you might say, is the paleocortex, the old brain, which basically takes care of the vegetative functions, the fear or the fight response, the basic kind of response. And above that is what we are going to be talking about the most probably, which is the cerebral cortex. It is the cerebral cortex which is the most magnificent creation of evolution from a neurological perspective. And that is critical to know, and hopefully that allows us as we move forward in our discussion today as the basis of where we go.
I would now like to ask, Doctor, that in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a striking metaphor of a tree growing upside down with the roots in the brain. Now, could you delve into the depths of this metaphor through the lens of neuroscience, illuminating its profound implications for our understanding of the mind?
Sure. So, the Lord Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 15th chapter, basically describes a tree which is sort of upside down. And the stanza that describes it says there exists a tree with its roots in the brain and its branches that grow downward, and its leaves are like the Vedas. And the one who knows or has knowledge of this tree is a master of the Vedas. Now, the Vedas, as you know, are considered probably the most ancient scriptures that delve into philosophy, but most important, spirituality. So what does this mean? How does this apply? Probably a more succinct explanation of the nervous system does not exist in as few words as has been described in the Bhagavad Gita. So what exactly, how does this correlate? Basically, the brain, which exists up here, it is called as the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord. So it is made up of literally billions and billions of its functional unit, its basic functional unit called the neurons. The neurons basically have a cell body and they have a long tail which is called as an axon. And these axons, they come down and they pass through, they basically constitute our spinal cord as well. They come down and then they come out of the vertebral column as well as from parts of the brain called as the cranial nerves or as the spinal nerves, and they innervate the entire human body. So literally, if you think about it in metaphorical terms, you have a tree. If you look at it, and the animation will make this very clear. The tree which has its roots in the brain, the branches as they get out and they circulate and they are spread across the body, and they innervate even the smallest, sort of the final tips of our fingers and every part of our body. And that is what is referred to by Shri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita as the leaves. And why is it important when he says, why is it important for us to understand when it is said that the knowledge of this is the knowledge of the Vedas? And that is because this anatomical infrastructure provides the substrate through which we can gain a realization or an understanding of reality that goes beyond the interpretation of either our mind or of our conditionings. And that is true knowledge. It is true Vida. Vida means knowledge, as the founder of Sahaja has always said. And the knowledge of this tree essentially is only gained through self-awareness. That energy that is present within us, when that energy is awakened, we realize the true nature of this tree, its branches, that is the nerves, and the so-called leaves. So Sahaja, as the founder, Srimataji, has expressed, and she said to me also a number of times in the privileged conversation that we had, that Sahaj essentially is a function of our nervous system. Human spirituality is not predicated, is not dependent on our cardiovascular system, our digestive system, our endocrine system. No. Human spirituality and its experience is a function of our nervous system. And that is exactly where Sri Krishna was going when he explained that in that very short stanza in the Bhagavad Gita.
And this is so interesting, and I'm sure so many of us have not had a chance to get to that kind of interpretation of that. And thanks so much for explaining that to us. Could you shed light on the intriguing connections between our physical nervous system and the abstract notion of a spiritual subtle system, and how might our neural processes relate to a deeper spiritual experience?
So let's start off with the gross anatomy and the physiology of the nervous system, a quick primer, and then we will move towards the subtler aspect of it and how they correlate. So as we discussed in the previous question, the human nervous system basically comprises the central nervous system, that's the brain, the spinal cord, and then you have the peripheral nervous system as well, which are these nerves. And a part of that is the so-called autonomic nervous system. So a lot of what we will discuss moving forward and in the subsequent episodes will relate to this critical function, which is the autonomic nervous system. So let's take a moment to sort of understand what is what. The brain and the spinal cord, which is the central nervous system, relates to both, as we discussed earlier, vegetative functions as well as our volitional functions, thinking, creativity, planning, etc. It's all a function of this beautiful thing we call the cerebral cortex. Besides that, we have locomotion, that is movement, hands. I'm sitting here right now. I know where my joints are. I know where my legs are. My eyes are looking and perceiving reality as we see around us. A critical part of understanding this, and I'm going to take a couple of minutes to explain this because this is important. Reality, as a human being perceives it, and this is absolutely fascinating. Reality, as every human perceives it, is an interpretation of the brain that resides within. It takes a while for this to sink in, because the brain itself is completely covered within the cranium. It does not interact with the outside world. The eyes receive impulses through the environment. The ears get sound waves and they create impulses, again electrical impulses, both from the eyes and the ears as well as from the environment around, sensory receptors that exist within the skin and the rest of the body. They are all brought up into the brain, and it is the brain that interprets those signals. Now, for example, I am looking at a camera as this is being recorded. My eyes are seeing it, I am hearing myself, I am speaking in the English language. There are literally millions of processes that are going on in this place right now. Now, because I was born in an era and grew up in an era where I know that this machine that I'm looking at and looking at you, that this is called a camera. I know the word for it. I know what it does. I know it's a recording device. It will record an image. It will record my voice. But imagine if I came from an era, say, just a few hundred years ago, when I did not know what a camera was. My eyes would still be able to see it, but not recognize it. So with the same exact object, based on my prior understanding of it, my reality changes. So it is still a camera, it will still do exactly what it is designed to do, but because I don't have an understanding of it, my reality of it changes, of how I see it. I'm speaking in English. If somebody doesn't understand English, they will say, what is this guy talking about? If somebody speaks in a language that I don't understand and says the exact same things I'm saying, I don't understand it because I don't have knowledge of the language that that person is speaking in. And this is very important. This is very, very important to understand before we get into spirituality, because reality, again, is what we perceive it to be. And there is a ton of literature in spirituality that says that the world we see around us is really an illusion. Now, of course, the literalists and from the scientific point of view, that is nonsense. Black is black, white is white, red is red, blue is blue, green is green. Why? Because the eye can perceive the wavelengths of visible light based on the spectrum. So, whether you know green is green or not, you may not know the word, but 10 people, unless they have visual impairment, are going to see green as green and red as red. So, within that framework, reality is the same. But where it changes, where it starts becoming somewhat different, is when we talk about things just as I gave an example of the camera. All of this is important. Why? Because that just tells us, so I took some time to explain it, so my apologies if this was a bit long-winded, but it is important to realize, because reality as a human being perceives it depends on his or her prior conditionings and their understanding and their background knowledge. If I were to be shown a picture that hangs in the Louvre of a lady with a very mysterious smile, considered to be the most famous painting in the world, perhaps I would recognize it as the Mona Lisa. But imagine somebody who has never heard of Mona Lisa, who has never heard of Da Vinci, sees that painting and may not recognize it because he or she might appreciate the beauty. So this is not to take away from the aesthetic sense of the individual, but may not recognize it as the Mona Lisa, the perhaps most famous painting in the world. All of this is important. Why? Because the world we inhabit, from the time we are born to the time we die, depends on how our brain has been programmed. Now let's move to the essence of your question. Spirituality is not dependent or seeks to elevate an individual above their conditionings, above their state of knowledge, above their whatever their educational status may have taught them or not, whatever their socio-economic conditionings may have brought upon them, whatever their cultural upbringing may have induced upon them. We are all products of our culture, our societies, our religion, whatever our beliefs, our educational status, our economic status. Spiritual reality is completely above it all. So to come back to that example now, to come back to it, why is spirituality different, or why is spirituality, how is it correlated? That there exists within us a subtle system that is very different and is universal. Just as the human brain and the spinal cord and the nerves and the peripheral nervous system is universal, the subtle system, so-called, which is the spiritual system, is very different, and it has some anatomical correlates with the gross nervous system. So like we have the autonomic nervous system, which has a sympathetic component and a parasympathetic component, likewise we have within us a subtle system that has the so-called energy channels, energy centers, and a way in which a human being, any human being on the planet, can experience reality completely agnostic of their cultural, philosophical, spiritual, educational, linguistic background.
It is definitely interesting to understand, how spirituality expands an individual in, different ways that you've explained. And I'm sure along the course of this series, we will get to hear more from you about that subtle system that you were talking about. But for now, if you could just paint us a picture of the human nervous system, revealing its intricate functions and, the fascinating structure. And as we zoom out, how does the autonomic nervous system fit into this grand neural tapestry, orchestrating our body's responses beyond conscious control?
So the autonomic nervous system, so-called autonomic, it has its own volitional system. So for example, how does this happen? If I start exercising now, my heart rate will go up. Why? Because my muscles will need more oxygen. Oxygen is carried by blood. Blood needs to be pumped out at a much faster pace and much greater force. So the adrenaline, as everybody knows, will start being pumped out, and it will constrict my blood vessels, and it will also increase the contractile force of my heart, which basically will increase the pressure within the system, and voila, I get more oxygen, and I get more blood. Likewise, breathing, likewise, digestion. We don't control these processes. When I eat something, I don't have to tell my stomach to go ahead and digest it. I don't have to tell my intestines to sort of go on moving the food forward. All of these are beyond our conscious control. We don't have to think about it. That is the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system basically arises from two parts in the human body. The first is in the brain, and the other one sort of is in the sacrum, which is at the bottom of the vertebral column, as you can see in the animation. It is called as the craniosacral outflow. The sympathetic nervous system, which is a complement, the other part of the autonomic nervous system, basically also comes out of origins in the brain. Remember the original thing that Sri Krishna spoke about, or that's in the Bhagavad Gita. That also starts from the brain, and it also emerges from the spinal cord. So the autonomic nervous system has two components, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. These two systems function complementary to each other. They do not necessarily antagonize each other, antagonistic functions, but they complement each other. For example, the sympathetic nervous system will increase the blood flow. Will increase the heart rate. It will help in those kinds of actions. The parasympathetic, on the other hand, will slow down the heart rate, and it will increase, for example, the flow of the peristalsis, or will promote peristalsis, which is the movement of food in the gastrointestinal tract. So the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems, they function as complements to each other. Now, how does it all work? So in the brain, as we said, we have these very small nerve bodies called as neurons. The nerves start from there through the axons. They come out of the brain in the form of cranial nerves, and then they also come out from the spinal cord. They come out, and these nerves basically branch out, literally branch out, and they enter the various organs, the entire organ system. So basically our eyes, our ears, our lungs, our heart, stomach, duodenum, pancreas, you name it, the reproductive organs, kidneys, all of them are innervated. Think of a tree with its branches going out, and these tiny thread-like structures, they completely, the expression in medicine is innervation. They basically penetrate into these organs, and that is how the autonomic nervous system controls these functions, the heart rate, respiration, gastrointestinal system, our endocrine system, by these nerves that are penetrated. So that is your hardware. If you think in terms of hardware and software, that is the anatomical hardware. These nerves that penetrate these organs, and based on whether they are parasympathetic nerves or whether they are sympathetic nerves, they have different they use different what are called neurotransmitters, or basically chemicals that drive the function of those organs. So that in essence is your autonomic nervous system. The word is important because again it is outside of volitional control, and that's a good thing, because otherwise it would be impossible to survive on a minute-to-minute basis. Now, couple of quick points. What is the main function of the autonomic nervous system? The autonomic nervous system's primary function is to maintain milieu interieur. It's a kind of a French expression. What does that mean? It ensures that the internal environment in which the organism exists is maintained in a state of balance. That word is critical, that function is vital. So if I exercise, to go back to the original example, my heart rate can go up, but at some point it does need to be brought down. Because if it just keeps on going and going and going, at one point my heart will fail. So that's why if there is acceleration, there has to be deceleration. If there is forward movement, that forward movement at some moment has to stop. And it has to kind of slow down. Let's think in terms of, for example, when we eat food and we have peristaltic movement, so the food goes down, stomach, duodenum, jejunum, ileum, etc., and then into the large intestine. All of this is maintained in this absolutely impossibly complex but completely integrated system. The two components of the autonomic nervous system constantly talk to each other. They don't function in kind of their own silos, and that's also very important from a spiritual point of view. So maintaining that internal balance and addressing the requirements of the organism as things move along, as the environment around that individual changes, is very important. In common parlance, if you do Google searches or you look at YouTube videos, the autonomic nervous system, they say, is something that helps you with flight or fight. Right? If I'm walking in a jungle, I see a tiger, okay, my brain recognizes this is danger, I need to start running, my heart rate will go up because immediately I need to start running, the body knows it, off I go. That's flight. But if there is a smaller danger that I can maybe fight it, same thing, flight or fight responses. But throughout our evolution, through measures that we really do not understand, through mechanisms that are yet to be elucidated, this system developed within organisms, and it is present in mammals, but it is most developed in human beings. And it is very, very, very important to know it, because the subtle system that we shall discuss in the next episodes is kind of the microcosm. The subtle system is the microcosm that reflects the macrocosm that at a gross level is the autonomic nervous system.
And thank you so much for this very detailed explanation. And this kind of also covers the next question that I had for you, which was, how do the parasympathetic and the sympathetic branches distinguish from each other, and how they kind of like interact with each other to maintain the body's balance and essential functions, etc. But this brings me to the last question for today. And the question is about the nerves. So nerves are like the body's electrical wiring, or at least so we heard. But how exactly do they transmit messages, and why are they crucial for our senses and movements? So if you could take us into that electrifying world of nerves, and also at the same time talk to us about how does our nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, and the nerves intertwine with the concept of the human spiritual subtle system?
So nerves basically are, as you exactly rightly said, they're like the electrical wiring. They're basically cells, and the way they function is through impulse generation and conduction. Impulse means an electrical impulse. So if you think of this, my hand as a membrane of the cell membrane. So you have sodium and potassium. These are two positively charged ions that go across the cell membrane. And when they go across the cell membrane, so basically potassium going out, sodium kind of coming in, they create a change in the electrical charge across the surface. So nerve impulse or propagation is basically the traveling of this impulse along a line. So let's say this is the beginning of the nerve, this is the end, so the impulse is generated here and down it goes. So that's exactly how the electrical charge travels. Much like, of course, in an electrical wire, it's different. It's actually it's an electrical charge which is slightly different or very different from a movement of potassium and sodium ions across membranes. Now, this somehow creates awareness. We don't know exactly how it creates, but we are aware. As we are aware, it's a state that is, say, for example, different than we are asleep. So this state of awareness is important. We don't know exactly how it is created within the brain, but that electrical impulse generation is what literally, as we said before, when we answered one of the first questions, is what life is about. Now, the way it functions is that when the electrical impulse arrives at a point, it causes the release of certain chemicals. They are neurotransmitters. So they could be acetylcholine, they could be dopamine, they could be serotonin in the brain, also in in the rest of the organs. It could also be adrenaline. So these are neurotransmitters that then are transferred across what are called as synapses. Synapses are a very, very important part of the nervous system, particularly in the brain. So what is a synapse? Let's take a look at it. That also helps to answer your question. The nerve comes at one end, ends there, and then the other one begins. And there is a little bit of a gap. It's called the synaptic cleft. So basically, the nerve impulse comes, releases the neurotransmitter, it activates the other part, and the impulse is propagated. Synapses are important. Why? Because when we will take a deeper look at the brain itself, neurons form connections with each other. And these connections are critical for the functioning of the brain. And it is hypothesized, because nobody's really nearly understood it, because we have billions of neurons, billions, each one of them interlaced and connecting with other neurons. It's like a collective. It's a network. Because billion times 10 becomes trillions, it is said that what makes us human at the end of the day is our synaptic connectivity. It is the richness of our cortex that makes it so. And that is why these nerves are so important, because if you think about it in terms of a calculus function, like an integral, right? It's an integral function of all of these trillions of synapses, all firing together, this network that exists within us, that constitutes consciousness. That's the hypothesis. And it is that what essentially distinguishes us from other species on the planet. So the nerves essentially function as individual components of a vastly complex, interlaced, integrated network that ultimately not only creates life, but makes us human.
This is really interesting, and this is very useful information, Dr. Ashish, and can't thank you enough for this very insightful discussion today. And we hope to connect with you in our next episode on, yet another topic for a deeper understanding of our audiences. And we would now like to take our audience to experience the state of meditation with a video from the founder of this meditation, and it'll be easy for you to follow along. And we wish you all the very best on this meditative journey. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Ashish.
Thank you, Monica.
Not much is written, except that we can say it is written, I will appear before you like tongues of flames. These are the centers, the chakras. And it also said that there is tree of life. Like Sri Krishna has described in Gita, that the tree of life is upside down. The roots are in the brain and the branches go down in all directions. Keep your eyes closed. First of all, please put your right hand on your heart. All the time the left hand is towards me. Now, here you have to say, in your heart, with all sincerity, Mother, am I the spirit? Ask the question 3 times in your heart. This is a very fundamental question. Now bring the right hand on to the left hand side of your stomach, in the upper part. Here press it. Now this is the center of your mastery, your guidance, your Guru Tattva as they say. So ask a question, Mother, am I my own master? This is a question to be asked 3 times. Mother, am I my own master? Now, bring your right hand down below, in the lower part of the abdomen. Now, this is the center from which all the divine work is done. All the pure work is done. So to ask 6 times, because this center has got 6 petals. Mother, please give me pure knowledge. 6 times you just ask. As a result of this asking, the Kundalini starts getting awakened. Now to help the Kundalini to rise, you have to cooperate with her. So please put your right hand on the left hand side in the upper part of your abdomen and press it on the stomach. Now here you have to say with full confidence, to help the Kundalini to rise, Mother, I am my own master. This you have to say 10 times. These are the 10 commandments which you have to say. That, Mother, I am my own master. Now, 10 times with full confidence. Now, please raise your right hand to your heart. Now, here you have to say, again with full confidence, Mother, I am the Spirit. This is the truth. You are the Spirit. But you have to say with full confidence, Mother, I am the Spirit. This you have to say 12 times. Now one has to know that God Almighty is the ocean of love. But above all, He is the ocean of forgiveness. So He forgives whatever wrong you do, He forgives. So don't feel guilty and put your right hand across. On the left hand side, in the corner which is made by your neck and your shoulder. Now here you have to say, again with full confidence, 16 times, Mother, I am not guilty. Please say it. Mother, I am not guilty. 16 times. I am not guilty at all. Please say it. Please say it. Now raise your hand across on your forehead. And it's a very important center. Here you have to say from your heart, Mother, I forgive everyone. Please say it from your heart. How many times is not the point. Mother, I forgive everyone. Now some would say that it's very difficult to forgive. But it's a myth that we do not forgive or we forgive. We do not do anything in both the cases. But if we don't forgive, then we play into wrong hands. So please say from your heart, Mother, I forgive everyone. Now please take your hand on the back agya, the same center, on the back side of your head and allow your head to rest on it and push it back a little bit. Now here, you have to say, for your satisfaction, because you always feel guilty, that, O Divine, if I have done anything wrong, please forgive me. Please forgive me. From your heart. Stretch your hand fully and put your center of your palm on top of the fontanelle bone area, which was a very soft bone in your childhood. Press it hard. Press hard your scalp. Now you have to move it 7 times, saying one thing, which you have to ask for. Mother, please give us my self-realization, because I cannot force on you. So you have to ask for it. 7 times, press it hard and move it 7 times, very hard. Slowly, saying that.